Hi there, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. The point I've always made on this, it shouldn't matter whether you're left-wing, right-wing, whatever your reason or whatever your assessment is as to why people cross the channel. Everybody, I think, agrees we don't want to see people in boats crossing the channel. It is incredibly dangerous, and we've seen some horrendous stories this year to highlight that. There are clear, demonstrable security issues as well. It's an incredibly expensive process when it gets to this end. And, of course, it means we have this sort of limbo policy of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people potentially hanging around, stuck in hotels with no status whatsoever. It's a lose-lose, whatever way you look at it at the moment, and it's a complete mess. I think we all agree on that. But is smashing the gangs really the answer to solving the problem?
Well, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who isn't directly speaking for the government and therefore has to support this policy who would suggest that this is anything new, anything we haven't heard before, anything we haven't been doing for years, and anything that's really going to make a very big difference. I mean, I think you summed it up brilliantly just now. You can arrest one smuggler, but as long as there is a refugee with no solution and a closed border, then there will be another smuggler who comes along to fulfill that service. And we all know that. And as you said very clearly, nobody seems to benefit from this situation. Nobody seems to benefit, certainly not refugees who have no safe way to come to the UK and are dying and drowning in the Channel or risking their lives and having horrendous journeys to undertake at the hands of smugglers. And certainly the UK public don't benefit from this situation either, do we? We're very unhappy with seeing this chaos on our shores. So we have to ask ourselves, why has this continued for so long? Because this is the same policy that's been in place for decades, isn't it? Because somebody does benefit. And that is what we need to remember. This news today is a perfect illustration of it. Another £150 million to who? To the private surveillance firms that are selling us drones, fences, infrared cameras. They've been doing this for decades, and they are making an absolute killing. It was reported in the papers today that Graham King, who owns the company called Clear Springs that runs the asylum hotels, is on track to become a billionaire. There are people who do benefit from the status quo, and that is why it continues.
And whatever anybody thinks of, the last government, I think we can all probably agree they were a bit rubbish. But I'm sure Rishi, if you sat down and had a cup of coffee with Mr. Sunak, he also wanted to smash the gangs. And I'm sure Theresa May wanted to smash the gangs. I'm sure Boris even wanted to... there's nobody that would say, I don't want to stop people. Of course they do. We all want to do that. We've got several, particularly North European countries, particularly France and Belgium and the Netherlands. Between us, we've got several Home Secretaries, we've got several military, several intelligence services, several police forces, several leaders, several border force. Nobody so far has the gang thing is already illegal, and the only person I can see from my research on this, Zoe, that's managed to talk to a people smuggler is a journalist from the BBC. I'm not aware that anybody else has caught one yet.
Yeah, well, some of them get caught from time to time, but you're absolutely right, because our conversation, you're absolutely right. This new government is doing the same thing as the last government. Our conversation is trapped between, should we try to stop make migrants disappear by stopping them being able to access smugglers and dinghies, or should we try to make them disappear by sending some of them away to a dictatorship in Africa? And in neither case will you ever make people disappear. And what is fundamentally lacking from our conversation about this is the angle that says, okay, this is a reality. It is a manageable number of people. We're talking about 30,000 people who came to the UK in the last year on these boats. We could provide a safe way for 30,000 people to reach us. It would be a heck of a lot less expensive than this latest deal to provide another set of cameras on the border that won't make any difference whatsoever. And then what we should be doing with those people is looking at what our needs are as a country. So we have huge needs. We are an aging population. We're a shrinking population. We need people to come and work on our farms, to work in our care homes, to work in our health sector, to work in construction, to work in services and hospitality. We need people in all of those areas. How can we match the people who need to come here with the needs of our country for immigration? And how can we start to look at this whole question completely differently, in a way that takes away the powers of the gangs, that takes away the huge contracts to surveillance companies that doesn't do us any good, and that saves the lives of the people who are desperate to come here?
Well, we won't need anybody working on the farms, because there won't be any of those soon either, Zoe, because I think they're being taken away by government taxation, but that's a whole other debate. But I mean, I take your point. Many people, regardless of, which is what I said at the beginning, regardless of where somebody sits politically, many people argue, look, we don't want this amount of people coming into the country. I know you can construct arguments about necessity of labour and things like that. We currently live in a world where, you know, moving around from country to country because you want to improve your life, and I don't blame anybody for giving it a go. But that's something 20 years ago maybe people would never have considered was possible. If you lived in Sudan, the idea of getting over to the UK was a no-no.
It is important to say that you talk about unprecedented numbers. That's taking in the whole of immigration. If you look at just asylum seekers, we have the same number of asylum seekers coming in every year now as we did in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's actually not unprecedented numbers of refugees who are seeking protection. That is a totally manageable number. So
it's the optics of how people come that has changed the if you like, the terms of the conversation.
So what we need to do is look at the people who really need to travel and put them at the forefront of our immigration policy. If you want to control numbers, people on small boats make up 5% of immigration. If you want to control numbers, they're not the right people to be focusing on, right? If you want to control numbers, there's all sorts of ways to do that. But these are people who do need solutions. They are small numbers of people. And the only realistic thing to do going forward is to look at how we can fit them into our existing immigration needs. They are not big numbers of people. They do need our help. And we can spend a whole lot less on a system that just lets them access our asylum system and then start rebuilding their lives and helping us in all those ways, in all those industries where we do need people.
All right.